getting away from the notion of like, this is just how it is. This is the way things will always be.
Hmm.
Just keep the status quo going versus what can we do different? How can we explore? How can we change? So that's
Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Richer Geek podcast. Today we have Jon Bassford. He's an operations professional, entrepreneur, and he's driven by his curiosity. Curiosity is his superpower, and it's driven his personal and professional advancement. After law school, Jon put this curiosity to work launching, managing, improving operations for venture-backed startups to global nonprofits. How you doing, Jon?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So it's two things. Curiosity can either kill the cat or it can make you advance and make you just, open up your eyes. So before we get started on the curiosity driven leadership, give us a little bit about your background and how in the world did you all of a sudden just start to like, you know what? Let's start a business around curiosity.
Sure. So, born and raised in the Midwest, went to,
Midwest.
yep, Decatur, Illinois was born and raised, spent majority of my time there, went to law school in Ohio. I actually went to Washington, D.C. on a family vacation in high school and I just fell in love with the D.C. metro area.
Mm.
And I spent a semester here in college, fell more in love with it and said, I'm gonna move there one day. After law school, I got a job offer in Baltimore. I'm like,
Mm.
close enough. So I was up there for about 6 years and been down here in the DC metro area for about 14. I'm in Maryland, just literally right outside the Beltway.
Mm-hmm.
And, after law school, to be honest with you, I did not know what I wanted to do with my career. I wasn't quite sure I wanted to practice law. And I fell into working for a legal organization I was a member of in law school. And so it launched initially a career in nonprofit association management.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, it was a really blessing for me in the sense that working for a small organization, I got to have my hands in a lot of different things and really have a direct impact. I mean, my first year as a professional, I'm sitting in boardrooms, right? I'm talking about governance. I'm talking about
Mm-hmm.
really high level things early on in my career. And that really allowed me to get this general knowledge of operations. And so when I switched to my next job, I kind of outgrew the organization a little bit and wanted to go a little higher. I actually started working for another trade association, but it was a startup that worked with startups. So I kind of had this double immersion into the startup world and really kind of, working on operations from a startup phase really allows you to really focus on efficiency and effectiveness and doing it.
Mm-hmm.
We always hear the phrase, if you had to start over from scratch, what would you do? If you
Yeah.
didn't have everything already existed and could just start from scratch. And I've had the ability to do that throughout my career and just really learned that my jack of all trades nature really
Mm-hmm.
lends itself to an operational career.
Yeah. And thank God that you're able to create, find that because so many people are just spinning their wheels, right? And they're just like,
Yep.
what if, I wish I'd have done this. And, it's always nice when people sit there and say, you know what, I kind of found the niche and it's actually fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
makes,
I'm a big believer that, kind of purpose, I think gets over verbalized sometimes as
Mhm.
this esoteric thing that we need to find and have to search for it. And I think it's just, finding what you're good at, finding what you enjoy doing, find a way to monetize it and just get to work.
Yeah. Cause, but that's, man, if I could monetize what I love to do,
Sure.
that'd be great. But, most of the times it's like, hey, I'd love to do this and there's no way I could monetize it or make it work. Then it becomes a hobby.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And that's the big difference between maybe you can expand on that. It's like people listening, it's like, oh, well, I love macrame. Yeah. Yeah. But so there's this difference between hobbies and doing what you love, but
Sure.
can you monetize it, right?
Yeah. I mean, certainly, but I mean, in some sense, there's people out there monetizing all kinds of crazy things these days.
Well, that's true.
So absolutely, I mean,
That is true.
it's got to be a service or a product that people want, right? Like yes, if you are, love making weaving baskets, but you can only turn out one per month, yet you're not going to make a career off of it, right? But maybe if you love weave basket making, and you can find a system that can
Hmm.
crank out 200 a month,
Hmm.
then maybe it can become a business, right? So it's all
Yeah.
about, just finding that right secret sauce of where your skills lie, what you enjoy doing, and then being creative, being curious about, how can we scale this?
Hmm. So let's talk about, what we're here for. So curiosity, curious leaders. Um, a lot of, I know a lot of leaders, and a lot of them aren't curious. There's some other things, you know. So give us a breakdown of what exactly is a curious leader. What is that
Sure.
definition?
Yeah, so let me first talk about why it's important to be a curious leader, and that's because our organizations are run by people, and so they fall into the same patterns that we as humans fall into, and
Hmm.
biologically, evolutionary, neurologically, whatever term you want to use, we are ingrained to have fear, to keep us safe,
Hmm.
to form habits, to form bias. If we didn't have habits, if you read the book, Power of Habits, if we didn't have habits, we'd literally be paralyzed with thought, just how to take a step, how to turn a doorknob, just every single thing that we do without thinking about it because we formed habits, we'd be paralyzed by thought. So all of these
Hmm.
things are natural occurrences in humans and necessary for survival and helped us get to this point in humanity. But when it comes to innovation, growth, and change, they're the enemy. And,
Hmm.
and that's where curiosity comes into play. Curiosity is about having that intentional and inquisitive thinking that helps you look beyond your current situations and your own limitations
Hmm.
to explore the possible.
Hmm. Because you look at one of the two or three things that we're born with,
Mhm,
and one is curiosity,
mhm, mhm.
right? I mean, you're
Yeah, yeah,
you're changing things. I mean, it's all that, and at some point we lose that, and a lot of it is, maybe fear, or maybe that we're just kind of our environment. We just get um, to the point where, well, this is just how it is now,
yeah.
and we no longer learn, or we're no longer curious because of that.
Yeah, there's a stat that's been floating around for a while. I think Joe Dispenza, if you know who he is, coined it. But I think it's something like by the time we are 35, it's either 85 or 95% of our actions and thoughts are completely programmed.
Hmm.
We don't think about it, we just do it.
Yeah.
It's just ingrained in us, and that's what we do. And so
Hmm.
the curiosity, being intentional about curiosity is a way to break free from that and break away from those habits to truly challenge yourself to think and
Hmm.
do differently.
Yeah, because a lot of times especially in our influential years,
Mhm.
we listen to a professor, we listen to bosses, we listen to friends or coworkers, and all of a sudden we just become, well, this
Yeah.
must be it, and we
Mhm.
no longer even fact check. We no longer even are curious about what the truth is. It's just like, well, this is what my teacher said, or this is what this person said, so therefore it must be true, and I don't even,
Yeah.
and you look at us today. I mean, we're just wow.
Mhm.
There's no curiosity. It's this way, my way, or no way,
Mhm.
and people have just become very inflexible. Um, so, how do you become that curious leader? So, let's talk about. You've talked a little bit about what it is. Um, I own my own companies. I'm a leader. How can I get back to being a curious leader?
Yeah, so being a curious leader, in my opinion, and I wrote about it in the book, The Curious Leader,
Hmm.
which if anyone's interested in a free copy of the first chapter PDF, they can actually text chapter to 33777, and we'll email you the first chapter via PDF. But I talk about three shifts that are required. One
Hmm.
is mindset, which
Yeah.
is moving from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, and that's
Hmm.
just simple thinking, right? It's just getting out of your own way and realizing, getting away from the notion of like this is just how it is, this is the way things will always be.
Hmm.
Just keep the status quo going versus what can we do different? How can we explore? How can we change? So that's just mental, right? Then
Hmm.
we shift into operational excellence, which is looking at how our organization can be managed to achieve the intended results
Hmm.
as efficiently and effectively as possible.
Hmm.
And the last shift is, unless you're the lead singer of a one person band, you got to bring the team along with you, right? And so you got to create a curious culture, which
Hmm.
allows for that kind of creativity to flow throughout the entire environment. So those are the really three shifts that are required in my mind to become a curious leader. And it all starts with just your thinking, just changing the way you're thinking and stepping outside the box. Some tactics and steps for that
Hmm.
are asking questions, challenging the status quo, just making sure that nothing is just we're doing it because that's what we do and how we do it, but
Yeah.
really learning to just dive in everything and say, is this the best way? Is this the best process? What can we do to change this to make it better?
How hard do you think it is for leaders? Because, I see a lot of leaders are just like going, I'm the boss. It's
Mhm.
my way, the highway. This is a dictatorship, not a, you know,
Yeah.
how hard is it to make that switch, you think, I mean, you got to like, bop them upside the head and say, look, there's a reason why no one wants to work for you.
Yeah, it's a tough one, and actually, I talk about this in my TEDx talk
Yeah.
on the DIY dilemma and how curiosity gets away from that. And sometimes it takes leaders kind of hitting rock bottom a little bit
Mm,
to shake loose, right? Because they have this mentality of ideas have to come from and through me only,
mm-hmm,
and then constantly question their staff while they keep getting the same results.
mm,
And that's why the people don't want to work for him. Because I mean, I literally have had a CEO that I worked for who was famous for asking the staff. The organization was founded the same year as Amazon. Why aren't we Amazon?
mm,
But he also put his guard up about making changes in how the organization operated, even things
mm-hmm,
like adopting video content for a younger generation, which is king, right? Like that's how
yeah.
you reach them. And his response to me was, that's not how I envisioned this organization operating when I started it 27 years ago. You mean before YouTube, before TikTok, before Instagram, you did not envision video
Right.
being a mechanism of content and education?
Wow.
Sometimes you do have to help them get out of their own way and just see it. You do it through data, you do it through inspiration, but
Mhm.
sometimes that is the hardest part.
Yeah. And yeah, I agree with that. And also that affects culture, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
talk to us about, it's in order to grow. I always, with my employees at the different hotels, it's like, welcome to the family. I want them to feel part of a culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that kind of goes right along with it. There are people that the culture, you can tell it's like if everyone's miserable,
Yeah.
you can usually trace it up to that
Yeah.
leader, right?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, cultures form whether you want or trying to or not, and
Hmm.
it's usually when you don't dictate what it is, it's usually one you don't want. And you're absolutely right. Culture has to be led from the top. And if it's, I've worked in places where leaders thought they were creating this most innovative, results-oriented culture, and what they created because of their attitude, their mechanism of leadership was teaching employees to keep their head down, do as little as possible, and that was the
That's
best
right.
way to not put your neck out there and be fired. So curious leadership or curious culture is about bringing everyone, like you said, making it feel like a family,
Yeah.
creating an atmosphere where people can exchange ideas, give feedback without fear of reprisal and being fired. It actually, the backbone of curious leadership or curious culture, I mean, is
Mm,
is rooted in a study that Google did. Google did a study called Project Aristotle. They were trying to define what made a team successful:
mm,
degrees, experience, diversity, whatever it was. And what they came back with was psychological safety.
mm.
And it was creating
Interesting.
that
Yeah.
environment where people felt secure and safe to speak up, speak out.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
instead of that living in that nature where everyone just sees the problem and ignores it because they don't want to be the tattletale, they don't want to be the one who tells the boss that their process, their procedure they put in place 5 years
Hmm.
ago is no longer working. That curious culture allows that to happen and allows things to almost work kind of like the way agile development works
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
software, right? Where you're constantly reiterating and solving problems as you go along through the operation.
Yes. Now let's talk about, we've kind of talked about companies already in existence, leadership and things like that. Um, I've worked for someone. I want to start my own gig, create a startup. What are the elements that I have to know beforehand in order to launch successfully into this type of realm of new type of leadership?
Yeah. So obviously there are some logistical things that you got to do. Like if you want to form a company, you got a LLC, whatever it may be.
Hmm.
You got to incorporate. You got to get your EIN, bank
Yeah.
account. You got to get your insurance. You got to make sure the risk management piece is there. There's really kind of about 7 to 10 things that you really got to make sure in place to have a true functioning business.
Hmm.
And I think where a lot of people go wrong is not being strategic about their operational systems early
Hmm.
on to create systems that are efficient and effective. It's kind of an afterthought. They just add piece by piece as they think they need it. But I really encourage people to be strategic about how you're setting it up and what systems you're using. And another thing I like to that I often see with founders is they tend to outsource or
Hmm.
hire up in areas of their own genius first
Oh,
and not the areas where they're not. Um,
that's
so, I,
interesting.
so, so like if you're a salesperson, you're a product person, you're a developer, whatever it is, they'll go out and hire salespeople. They'll go out and hire marketers. They'll go out and hire developers, but they don't hire a bookkeeper. They don't hire an operations manager. So what happens is that founder gets sucked down into these areas that really aren't worth their time
Mm.
for the cost of what their hourly wages should be worth. And it's also an area that they're not overly proficient in, and it
Mm.
causes a lot of stagnation in the growth.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm guilty of that. It's I worked in my business for so long, and finally I'm like going, I hate accounting. I hate bookkeeping.
Yeah,
Why am I doing the bills?
yeah, yeah,
You know, and it wasn't until I delegated, and I went through some coaching also, and they talked about find your unique ability.
yep, yep,
What are you good at?
yep, yep,
And then only do that thing. And then you delegate
yep.
because there's someone else that's an expert, unique ability in
Mhm.
bookkeeping, operations, sales, marketing.
Right.
And I don't like any of that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
why am I doing it?
I always encourage people to ask kind of three questions, right?
Yeah.
What am I good at?
Yeah.
What do I like doing?
Hmm.
And what is worth my time to do? You should have a thought in your head of if I were just working for myself and I was billing out my time hourly, whatever I
Yeah.
want to make per year, divide by 2080, which is what a 40-hour work week is, right? Over the year, find out what it is you want to be making. And
Yeah.
if usually for an entrepreneur, that's probably going to be somewhere between 150 to $300 an hour. When you're starting
Sure.
out, as consultants, that's kind of a going rate.
Yep.
Then why are you doing the $30 an hour bookkeeping job?
Yeah.
Right? You're devaluing your worth by
Mhm.
using your time in these tasks.
Yep. And, there's different ways. I mean, I started out with VAs. It's like, hey, I
Yep.
may not be able to afford 30, 35, 40, an hour, 50,000 a year,
Mhm.
but you can find there are other ways. There are no longer really excuses, is there? Just like, well, I can't afford to get in help. It's like, yeah, you know what? You can.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
I
ways.
mean, you use sites like Upwork, right? Even do things
Exactly.
like project based, right? Like a lot of times people, another problem a lot of founders will make is they ramp up hiring full-time people for
Hmm.
part-time jobs. And,
Hmm.
and that tends to be when they get in trouble. Use sites like Upwork, find consultants, work with people on a fractional basis until you have the recurring revenue to justify and the
Yep.
time needed from these individuals to justify full-time roles.
Yeah, and that's great advice. Absolutely wonderful advice. There are so many platforms. When I got started, I called it PG days, which is pre-Google days. That's when I started my business. So I had excuses, ladies and gentlemen, for those because small town Indiana, I'm like going, I don't know how to do anything. It's yellow pages, flip to the yellow pages, how to do something. I mean, I don't know. But nowadays, it's like, listen, everyone, you have people like John. You have his website, his expertise, his information. There are no excuses anymore. The only excuse is right here inside your own head. If you don't believe you can do it, you're not going to believe it. You're not going to do it. So let's talk about, we talked a little bit about the curious leader. Is there any other things inside of that book that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I mean that's really the main thought is the book for highlight some of it for you guys is I dive into my own personal experience from consulting, my real
Hmm.
life examples I come across, but I also tap into stories and the big names, right? Talk about Steve Jobs.
Hmm.
There's a great story about when he was being brought prototypes. Again, thinking about challenging the status quo and asking questions and looking at things differently. People kept bringing him prototypes with a physical keyboard at the bottom of the phone. And because that's what we had. We had
Mhm.
Blackberries, we had Nokias and all that type of stuff.
That's right.
And he dared to ask the question, why does it have to have a physical keyboard? And that's what revolutionized the phone into the iPhone and what we all do now.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's some that have the flip and all that types coming back, but just stories like that truly showcase, how just little thinking, asking questions can do it. If we have time, I'll do another quick story.
Hmm.
It's from Bezos. I love
Hmm.
this story. Bezos, took a bookstore to international marketplace to the largest storage company for data that developers use all around the world. Manufacturing got changed, not manufacturing, but supply chains got changed because of how he did it. But he contributes an employee early on with the greatest idea that helped change Amazon. This was when he was just working in his basement in his garage. Had a handful of employees, and it was all hands on deck, boxing up books. And they're all on the ground, and they're all aching about how their knees hurt. And Jeff's like, man, we really need to get knee pads. And the employee goes, no, we need a packing table. He went out, bought a couple of packing tables, got off their knees. They doubled their production
Hmm.
within a month. And says that's the single biggest uh, idea that helped propel Amazon because he was looking at the wrong problem. The
Yeah.
problem wasn't that their knees hurt. The problem is that they were on their knees. And she thought to say, hey, look, this is the real problem. Let's fix that. And it made all the difference.
Wow. Absolutely wonderful. Is there anything else? I know you have another book, Co-Parenting. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we finish up today?
Yeah, I can talk briefly about the co-parenting book. I'm hoping that comes
Yep.
out here in the next 3 or 4 months, mid to late summer of 2025 here.
Hmm.
But really, that's much more of a personal project. After I got divorced with my ex-wife, I kept having family friends say, hey, what's it like parenting with your ex-wife? And I was like, great. Like we could write a book on co-parenting. So about a year and a half ago, I said, I'm going to stop just talking about that and actually do it. And it
Hmm.
really, again, kind of thinking about curiosity and challenging the status quo. I was a product of divorce growing up in the 80s. I had the typical arrangement where I lived with mom and stepdad. My dad saw us every other weekend. My
Yep.
mom had all the real responsibility of sick and homework and all that type of stuff, and dad got to be the fun dad on the weekends.
Hmm.
But now things are changing, right? That both parents are more engaged in daily process of the kids' lives, and it's really kind of just challenge you to look beyond that status quo of how things used to do it, and what are the best practices to truly bring about co-parenting in a different way. And the secret for me, which is the subtitle of the book, is it's not about you. It's not about selling old scores. It's not about your ego. It's not about, are you getting all the right time? It's about the kid and kids and what they need first and foremost, and then looking at the nucleus, looking at the whole group. My ex-wife and her parents and her uncles were at my wedding to my current
Hmm.
wife. We still, I talk to my ex-wife on a daily basis, usually about the kid, but
Yeah.
we were intentional about staying together as a family, even though we weren't divorced. And it's really
Yeah.
made a major difference in how my son sees the world.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. I can go back. Yes. This is much better than probably what we went through. Um, and good for you, because it is hard,
Yeah.
because sometimes divorce is not, it can be a little sticky, and to actually fight through that thing of, it's not about me. It's not about her. It's about us together and forming something strong for when our child grows up, that there's an environment that's productive.
Yeah.
How can people find you, Jon?
Yeah. The best of ways for the consulting side, go to think-lateral.com. And on my kind of personal brand side, they can go to jonbassford.com, Jon, bass like a fish, Ford like a car.com. And those are the two best ways to get a hold of me.
All right, Jon. Well, I appreciate you coming on the Richer Geek podcast. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.